The purpose of this video is to give you a brief overview of how to write your personal statement for graduate school. This is a very particular genre of writing. It tends to trip students up because it feels very high stakes, and it also requires you to be really self-confident in your own personal history, and that can be hard for many students, but hopefully this video will make it a little bit more manageable. This is my contact information. My name is Anne, and as Springfield College students, you can definitely think of me as a resource that you can reach out to if you're having trouble with this statement. The real title of this presentation should be How to Write Your Personal Statement for Graduate School Without Losing Your Mind. In total disclosure, I did lose my mind a little bit when I wrote my personal statements for graduate school, so hopefully what I learned through that process can help you. The first thing to think about, this is even before you start writing. You want to think about what is your purpose for writing this statement. Obviously, the purpose is to get into graduate school, but it's also a good opportunity to think about your purpose or your reason for going into a particular area of study. So in whatever form of drafting is most comfortable for you, whether that's talking it through, doodling, or doing some free writing, kind of work through these questions and answer them as best you can. What's your purpose of study? Why do you want to do this field? And what are you going to do with this degree? This is really a chance to say, how will I specialize? So for example, let's say you're interested in getting an MBA. This is the time to think through what aspect of business do you want to go into? Do you want to go into accounting at the MBA level? Do you want to go into marketing? Or maybe you're more interested in nonprofits. So really just do some work with yourself and figure out what kind of practitioner you want to be. You don't have to have it all decided. For example, if you're applying to medical school, you want to find the right balance between saying, if I don't get into pediatrics, there's no point in being here. And well, I have no idea what I want to do, maybe be a doctor. So you might say, while I know I'll be exposed to many specialties throughout my training, at this point I feel particularly drawn to pediatrics. What are you going to do with this degree? Again, be able to name the kind of job and the kind of setting you want. What unique preparation do you have for this degree program? So what have you done at the undergraduate level, either in class or out of class, that will serve as good experience? This is a nice time to take stock of not only your relevant coursework, but also any internships you might have had, any clubs or organizations you might have belonged to, or any volunteer experience. This isn't the time to panic as to whether or not you have or have not done enough. You're just taking stock. Are there any issues that you may have encountered that you might like to mention? These would be big picture things that affected how your transcript or how your materials are going to show up. And do this for every school. Why this school? If you're applying to a program, spend some time on the website and figure out what it is about their faculty, their courses, their community partners, their culture that makes this a great fit for you. And then you really want to just be able to leave this pre-writing session with a strong sense of who you are and why you're applying to graduate school. Once you have some of these thoughts worked out, you can go ahead and start to draft the essay. Drafting can be, for some writers, just jumping in and typing it up. And for other writers, you might use these 3 questions as an outline. But either way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these 3 questions. Where have you been? Where are you now? And where you're going? Because I think that they provide a nice structure for your essay. So when we ask where have you been, some of the research that I did said start with college experiences. I take that with a grain of salt. What you want to do is be able to show that you can look at your origin story for wanting to enter into a particular field or area of study with an adult perspective. So maybe you want to go into medicine because you saw doctors taking care of a loved one when you were young. To leave that out of your personal statement, you would be leaving behind your true origin. But you want to show that you understand the grown-up logistics of it. So rather than saying, I want to be a doctor because doctors are heroes, you might say, I want to be a doctor because I see how through years of study and training, they can really make a difference in people's lives. In general, though, start with, what is it about your college education that has let you feel as though the next 2 or 3 years are pretty important for you? This is often a story or a narrative that can be a good way to hook people in. Some people prefer to relate to a text to show why their interaction with a particular text sort of sets up where they are, what their college experiences were and how that leads them to applying to graduate school. But the key is that by the end of the statement, we should have a sense of who you are, what is your voice, and what makes you unique. From there, you want to go into the where are you now. This is really the chance to reflect on not the narrative or the storytelling parts of your education, but what have you done in terms of coursework, internships, volunteer, publishing, research, jobs, clubs, anything else. What have you done that makes graduate school a logical next step? Graduate school, and some people do well with templates for sentences, so you could say, graduate school is a logical next step for me because my coursework has introduced me to this, or my internship allowed me to do this, but I still want to do this. This is a place where you need to brag. You don't need to be arrogant about it, but you also don't need to undersell or apologize for your experiences or your lack thereof. This is the place where that self-confidence that we talked about needs to come through. For me, no process sort of took away my self-confidence more than applying to graduate school, so that was really hard to do. You are performing it. Have somebody who is not you read this and ask them the question, am I selling myself appropriately? Am I showing myself in the best possible light? But you really want to review what you've done so far and let us know why that makes graduate school the logical next step. The last thing you want to do is where you are going. And this is going to return to those questions about what will you do with this degree. So what are your career goals? You want to be a little specific, but show flexibility. You want to show that you have a sense of what you want to do, but that you're not, unwilling to explore different goals once you learn more about the field. This is the place where, especially if you're applying for PhD or doctorate programs, that you show a research agenda, right? So what is it? What are the big questions that you hope to answer through your own original research? And this is the place where you sort of show the contributions you want to make to the world. This is also the place where, more than likely, the first 2/3 of this statement are going to be, you're going to cut and paste them for most of your applications. Some of the schools will have more specific prompts, but in general, you write one statement and modify it as needed. So this is also the place where you say, why this school? So earlier, I asked you to really be able to say specific things about programs. This is where you do it. I think the Springfield College would be a great fit for me because... And then you might talk about the coursework. I'm so excited about the concept of taking classes such as. You might talk about the internship or placement possibilities. You might talk about the culture of the college, right? You can't talk about Springfield College without talking about the humanics philosophy. What you want to be careful of doing is tying your interest in a program to a specific faculty member, especially if that faculty member is sort of the star or the famous person within this program. Faculty members leave. You can be internally super excited about working with Professor X, but instead of focusing on Professor X in your statement, talk about how you think the faculty in general are exciting and give a few examples of things that they do that are exciting. So once you have this drafted, here are some final tips that you can work with. Apply broadly. Apply to a lot of schools, just like you did for undergrad. Apply to your dream school, your reach school, your safety school. And just remember that the application is not a moral judgment. It's about finding the right fit. Customize your statement for each school. Include specific details about the institution. This is silly, but be really careful when you're cutting and pasting that you do not leave details about one institution in another institution's application. I've seen this happen, and it's not great. It can really make you look not detail oriented. Always proofread before you upload, even if you don't think you've changed anything. We talked about specific faculty members. We talked about, if it's appropriate, be prepared to discuss a research agenda. We talked about being self-confident. Get an editor. You want to have this statement read by different people along the way. Have it read by people in the Career Center or writing specialists such as myself. Have it read by your academic advisor who is in that field and can gauge not just have you nicely written your research agenda, but is this a viable research agenda? And then also get somebody who is going to look at your grammar, who is going to look at your typos. By the time you will be ready to submit this thing, you have read it so many times, you're not going to need to look at it anymore. That's when you bring in a clean reader just to fix the mechanics. You want this essay to be clean and correct. And the last thing, and this is really important to me, is to speak your truth. I find that whatever a committee's decisions are, it's easier to accept if what you're saying is true and authentic for yourself. Because again, admission or, rejection is not about are you smart enough? It's about are you the best fit for that program? So when I applied to graduate school, and my personal statement was a nightmare. It was really hard. I wish I had these tips. I think I applied to 13 schools. I got into about 6 or 7, and I was rejected from the rest. And it doesn't feel good to be rejected, but I knew that the statements I was giving in ultimately reflected myself as a teacher and a scholar. And so that maybe, especially with a little critical distance, that wasn't the program for me. So start working on this early. Allow yourself time to draft. Allow yourself time to work with a series of readers who come in at different times and for different roles, and have confidence in the choices that you've made that have gotten you to applying to graduate school. And feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Best of luck.